My son fired me from the company I built. That night, I opened the safe he didn't know existed. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. The boardroom was silent. That particular silence, the one you feel in your chest, where your heart should be. I sat at the mahogany table, the same table I'd chosen myself 15 years ago when we moved into this office on the 40th floor. The leather chair beneath me was expensive, ergonomic, designed for someone important. Today, it felt like a guillotine. My son stood at the head of the table. Maximilian. That's what he insisted on being called, no Maximilian, not Max. Not the boy I'd taught to read at 5, to negotiate at 12, to dream at 18. He wore a charcoal suit, Italian. His hands were steady as they rested on the polished surface. He didn't look at me. "Thank you all for attending," he said, his voice carrying that manufactured confidence that comes from rehearsal. "I've asked you here because we need to discuss the future of this company, and that future requires structural change. I already knew what was coming. Mother's intuition, perhaps. Or just the ability to read the room, to see the way Dimitri from finance wouldn't meet my eyes. The way Elena from HR had positioned her pen on top of the folder, ready to document whatever was about to happen. We've been operating under the same leadership for 2 decades, Maximilian continued, and I heard it then. The calculated respect in his tone, the kind of respect you show before you push someone off a cliff. It's been productive. But the market is shifting. We need someone with fresh perspective, someone younger, someone with... He paused, and I watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. With new energy. Still, he didn't look at me. "Mom, you've built something incredible here. Nobody disputes that, but you're tired, and that's okay. That's human. Everyone reaches a point where they need to step back." Now he finally turned to face me, and I saw in his eyes something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not guilt, just calculation. "This is that point. The board has voted unanimously. Effective immediately, you're being transitioned to an advisory role. Purely advisory. You'll retain your shares, of course, but your operational authority is terminated." I didn't hear anything after terminated. I've been told I didn't react. That I sat there, perfectly still, my hands folded on the table in front of me, like I was posing for a portrait. Later, people would say how composed I was, how dignified, how I didn't even raise my voice. That's not dignity, that's shock. That's the moment when your mind fragments into 1,000 pieces, and one of those pieces is still capable of maintaining the facade. I stood up. I remember my chair sliding backward, with barely a sound, soundproofed. Of course, we'd paid for the best acoustics money could buy. I remember the leather of my handbag, smooth against my fingers. I remember the elevator down, 40 floors of silence, my reflection multiplied in the mirrored walls, a woman I didn't recognize staring back at me. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed. People walked past me on the street with their coffees and their phones and their small, manageable problems. A woman nearly bumped into me, and I realized I'd stopped moving, stopped existing in real time. I drove home, though I don't remember the drive. There's a gap in my consciousness where the journey should be, and I've learned not to ask too many questions about those gaps. The apartment was empty. This was always true. Maximilian had never lived there, not since he graduated and insisted on his own place. My husband had been gone for 8 years, a heart attack in his sleep, quick and clean and without warning. I was alone in the way only successful women are alone, surrounded by evidence of achievement but devoid of anything living. I walked through the rooms. The photos on the walls followed me with their frozen smiles. There was Maximilian at 6, holding a business card I'd printed for him as a joke. There was both of us at the office opening, his hand on my shoulder, my head tilted toward his, like he was the only solid thing in the world. There was Igor at 35, still believing that the world was good, that his wife would always come home, that his son would grow up to be better than both of them combined. In the hallway, I stopped at a door I hadn't opened in months. The original office space, the first one, the one in the basement. We'd kept it as a kind of shrine, though I never articulated that, never admitted that's what it was. After the company went public and we moved to bigger buildings, we'd never quite gotten rid of this place. A reminder, a backup, a proof that something had once existed here. I stepped inside. The desk was still there, that ridiculous piece of junk, held together with hope and two-part epoxy. The walls were covered in photographs, blueprints, sketches of the first products. And on the far wall, behind a painting that Maximilian had given me years ago, a gift I'd never been sure he'd chosen himself. There was a safe. I'd never told him about it. Not because I was planning this, not because I'd anticipated any of this. I'd simply wanted one place that belonged entirely to myself, one place where a woman could store the things that mattered without having to explain, justify, or defend them. I pulled the painting to the side. The safe was black, old-fashioned, the kind of thing that looked like it belonged in a detective novel. The combination was simple: Igor's birthday, then Maximilian's, then the day we'd opened the company. I'd never written it down. It lived in my body, in my fingers, in the unconscious memory of hands that had lived through the building of something. The dial turned left, then right, then left again. The mechanism was smooth, oiled by years of care I didn't remember providing. The door swung open with a soft click that sounded like the last truth I would ever hear. Inside, leather folders, stacked with the precision of someone who knows that chaos is a luxury only the young can afford. The first folder contained the original partnership agreement, not the one anyone knew about that was a reworked version, prettified for investors and boards. This was the original. Igor's signature was still dark blue, the ink barely faded. Mine was there too, my maiden name, with the slightly unsteady hand of a woman who hadn't yet learned how to sign her own life into being. The second folder held stock certificates. More specifically, it held the certificates that proved beyond any legal doubt that 73% of the company belonged to me. Not in theory, not distributed through a series of trusts and holdings and obfuscated structures. To me, personally, completely, Maximilian had only been given operational control. That was always the plan. I'd wanted to teach him to run the company before I handed it over to him. The handover was supposed to happen when he turned 40. He was 36. He had been patient, or he'd simply run out of patience. The third folder was my will. Updated 7 months ago, when my lawyer had suggested I modernize the document. Everything went to Maximilian. The company, the patents, the properties, the money, all of it. I'd signed it believing that he would take what I'd built and make it better, expand it, ensure that my legacy became, his legacy became something transcendent. Below the will was a letter, sealed in an envelope, written in Igor's careful handwriting. My darling, if you're reading this, I'm not here anymore. And if you're reading it in the context of opening that safe, if you're doing it because something has gone wrong, then listen to me as if I'm still alive, because every word of this is me, still alive somewhere in you. I know you. I know your heart. It's your strength and your weakness. You believe in people too easily because you believe in yourself so completely. You thought if you loved our son enough, if you showed him enough of your vision, enough of your sacrifice, that he would become what you needed him to be, a mirror of your own goodness. He might not. People are not projects, my love. And that's the one lesson I never managed to teach you, because you taught me instead that we're all capable of being better than we are. You made me believe that. You made me believe it every single day. But some people stop believing when the belief stops benefiting them. If you're opening this safe, it means you've discovered what happens when someone you love decides that your love is currency, that your sacrifice is a down payment on something he wants to take for himself. I'm leaving you two things: this documentation and this permission. Permission to do what you need to do. Permission to stop being a mother for a moment and be, instead, what you've always been underneath: a survivor. You built an empire from nothing. You did that without magic, without luck, without the kind of privilege that makes building easy. You did it with your mind and your will, and your refusal to accept that the world's rules applied to you. If he tries to take it back. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. The only mercy I'm asking you to have is the mercy of honesty. With every breath I don't get to take, I love you. I folded the letter and put it back. My hands were shaking, but not with rage. With something colder, something that felt like truth. The final folder contained the documents that changed everything. A contract between myself and Igor, written before we were married, before Maximilian was born. It was an agreement about succession, about contingency, about what would happen if one of us decided to step away from the dream we were building together. Buried in the legal language was a clause. It stated that in the event of dissolution of partnership by either party through breach of fiduciary duty, or actions taken in contravention to the founding principles of the organization, the remaining partner, or that partner's heirs, retain the right to reclaim 100% of assets held in personal name. Maximilian hadn't written the agreement. I had. With Igor's blessing. With the kind of paranoia that only comes from building something from nothing and knowing how many people want to take it. He'd violated the clause the moment he voted to remove me from operational control without consulting me, without offering me a real transition, without honoring the fact that I was still the founder, still the visionary, still the woman whose name was on the patents. I sat on that ancient desk, the ridiculous, beautiful desk that had held my first dreams, and I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't call anyone. I simply sat there and understood, with the clarity that comes only rarely in life, exactly what I had to do. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. Igor's watch was still in the safe, the one he'd worn the day he died. I picked it up, heavy in my palm. His time stopped at 4:15 in the morning. I'd never bothered to restart it. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer. "Victor," I said when he answered, his voice thick with sleep, "I need you to do something for me. Tonight. No, I don't care what time it is. Yes, I'm serious. I need you to file an emergency injunction, and I need you to prepare documentation for a full reassertion of control." I could hear him waking up on the other end of the line, the way people do when their phones deliver a client in crisis. "Tell me everything," he said. I did. The office was the same at dawn. The same mahogany table, the same leather chairs, the same view of the city below that I'd chosen, because I'd wanted to remember, every single day, how high we'd climbed. Maximilian arrived at 8:47 a.m. I know because I watched the security footage later, watched his face as he read the email that had been sent to every member of the board at 6 a.m., precisely timed for when they'd be reading their morning messages. The email contained 3 documents: my original partnership agreement, the stock certificates, and my will. Followed by a single line. "Effective immediately, I am reinstating my operational control, exercising my majority shareholder rights, and requesting the resignation of Maximilian Volkov from his position. All board decisions made in the last 24 hours are hereby null and void." I was there when he came to find me, standing in the office that had been his, looking out the window he'd chosen. He looked smaller than he had in the boardroom, smaller and angrier. "You can't do this," he said. "You can't just—" "I can," I said quietly. "The law is very clear, actually, and I have very good lawyers." He was breathing hard, and I could see him calculating, the way I'd taught him to calculate, looking for exits, finding none. "You're destroying everything," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm preserving it." What I didn't tell him was that I was also destroying something irreplaceable, the version of him that I'd allowed myself to believe in, the version where he grew into the man his father had been, Or at least the man his father had aspired to be. The version where love was enough, where blood meant something, where family wasn't a transaction to be optimized. "I'm going to fight this," he said. "I have lawyers too." "Yes," I said. "I know, and you'll lose. Because the law is very simple when money and documentation are involved. The law doesn't care about emotions. The law cares about signatures and dates and the precise moment when someone decides to reveal who they really are." He left. I didn't watch him go. That was 14 months ago. The company is thriving. I've cleaned it of the deadwood, the yes-men, and the climbers that Maximilian had been promoting. I've brought in people who remember why we started this, people who understand that profit without purpose is just theft from the future. I've also done something else. I've been very careful, very methodical, and very legal. I've been paying attention to where Maximilian goes, who he talks to, what he does in the space between waking and dreaming. I've built a file on him that would rival anything the authorities could produce, because I haven't destroyed him. Not yet. I've simply kept the option available. Last week, he tried to call me. I didn't answer. He's trying to build something new now, a competing company, funded by people who don't understand that he's not like me. He can run things, he can't build them. And that, I think, will be a more effective punishment than anything I could legally impose. People ask me if I regret it, if I regret taking back the company, if I regret the distance that's now between me and my son, if I regret any of it. I tell them the truth. I don't regret it, but I mourn it. I taught him to be ambitious. I taught him to be strategic. I taught him that the world rewards the strong and punishes the weak. I taught him all the lessons that made me successful, and I forgot to teach him the one lesson that might have made him good. I forgot to teach him that power without mercy makes you hollow. That ambition without love makes you hungry in a way that food can never satisfy. That winning against your own mother costs you something that no contract can restore. I stand in the original office sometimes, the one with the safe behind the painting. Igori's watch sits on the desk next to mine. His time is still stopped at 4:15. Mine keeps moving forward, second by second, marking the distance between who I was and who I've become. I'm not sure I like her, this woman who was willing to destroy her son to save her company. I'm not sure I'm proud of her. But I'm certain of one thing, I built her too. Just like I built everything else in my life. With my hands, with my will, with my refusal to accept the world's definition of what's possible, and that means I own her completely. She's mine. We're all ours alone in the end.